Volume 1. 1. Hazel. The light was on in the greenhouse. If someone was inside, Hazel could lose everything. She hesitated, crouched by the edge of the dining hall. Her knees shook, holding the awkward pose. To keep her balance, she leaned on the handle of the collection basket sitting at her side. Tilting her head, as if that would help her hear better, she strained to make out any sound from the brightly lit building. Outside of the soft yellow light from the greenhouse, the night was pitch black. It was the new moon, and wisps of cloud hid the stars from sight. Lights out was long past, and everyone in the compound was in their beds. Or, at least, everyone should be. But the greenhouse light was on, and all of Hazel's carefully laid plans were in jeopardy. Was the greenhouse empty? Had someone forgotten to turn the lights off after their shift? Was an insomniac prowling the orderly rows of vegetables, just waiting to sound an alarm at the sight of two children creeping past the translucent walls? Hazel felt a sharp, insistent tug on her belt and glanced behind her. She knew her younger brother was there, but Caleb's features completely disappeared into the night. "What's wrong?" He kept his question to a whisper, but even so Hazel felt a cold squeeze of fear on her heart. She took an unsteady breath and pressed a finger to where his lips might have been. They were so close. The forest was barely 100 feet from where they were crouched. All they had to do was sprint past the greenhouse, make it through the gate in the palisade, and disappear into the tree line beyond. If they were forced to give up and try again another night, they wouldn't have the safe darkness of the new moon. And in less than 2 weeks, Hazel would be 18, and it would be too late for Caleb. She wouldn't give up now. They had to risk rushing past the greenhouse and hope that no one was inside to see them. She touched Caleb's head, soothingly, then rose from squatting. She felt him rise behind her. She could hear his even breaths. He trusted her, and she prayed that trust was well-founded. It all came down to this. If they got caught... If she was honest with herself, she had no idea what Prophet Saul would do to her for trying to flee. But she had a few ideas, and fear made her dizzy when she thought about them. Hazel took a deep, steadying breath. Her mother had taught her to breathe through the pain of cramped knees during long vigils by the Wellspring. Breathe in slowly over a count of 4, hold for 4, and release. She did that twice, then crouched a little lower and started the slow, agonizing creep toward the well-lit greenhouse. The path ahead was dark, at least, and bushes provided some cover. Soon she and Caleb reached the front side of the greenhouse. Hazel paused again, calculating the distance. The greenhouse was only 60 feet long. 60 brightly lit feet, light pouring through the plastic walls where every step could mean exposure. She and Caleb could cross the distance in less than 30 seconds, but those 30 seconds could lose them everything. Twisting both hands in opposite directions on the handle of her basket, Hazel reminded herself why they were doing this. "I'll never let them take you away," she silently promised her brother. "Whatever it takes." Pushing those thoughts from her mind, Hazel let go of the basket with one hand and reached back to squeeze her brother's hand. Then she started the torturous creep past the greenhouse. As the light sliced across her face, she crouched even lower. She couldn't believe, after all her careful planning, how exposed they were. The light cast their long shadows against the bunkhouses across the way. Anyone awake inside would see the flicker in the darkness. She realized she wasn't breathing anymore. just holding her mouth firmly closed and moving as quickly as stealth would allow. 5 feet. 10. 20. In the greenhouse, a glimmer of motion. She froze, dropped to the ground, and felt Caleb struggle to keep hold of her belt as he copied her. The light hadn't been mistakenly left on. The Wellspring prophet himself was in the greenhouse. He was tending to the fresh shoots and leaves of what would become the fall harvest. Hazel watched him, her eyes wide, afraid to even blink in case the movement gave her away. Saul was a tall, gaunt man in his late 50s. He had a long, carefully tended beard and equally long hair that he kept clean and brushed. Hazel had known him her entire life, but lately he had been acting with a feverish intensity that felt new. Seeing him with his hands among the greens, she felt a pang of remorse. How would he react to her and Caleb disappearing? Would he be worried about them? Angry? Disappointed? It didn't matter. She'd made her arguments to the commune's leader and her pleas, and they had fallen on deaf ears. There was no rescue from that quarter. No, as far as she was concerned, Prophet Saul was the most dangerous man in the world. His will was the way here. The prophet's newest wife, Anna, shuffled into view. She said something to him, smiling nervously, and plucked a leaf from a nearby plant. He shook his head sharply and slapped her hand, not in anger, but as if he was chastising a naughty child. They weren't facing her, but weren't quite facing away either. She and Caleb would be at the edge of their peripheral vision. Was it more dangerous to move and risk catching their eye, or to wait, hoping that neither turned this way? Hazel bit her lip. They couldn't just stay put, waiting for discovery. It was now or never. She pushed up onto all fours, and Caleb let go of her belt. Her collection basket slapped into the ground, and Hazel winced. Had anyone heard? Had anything fallen out? She touched around the ground to check, but she didn't feel anything. There was no time to be entirely sure. Moving as fast as she dared, trusting Caleb would be right behind her, Hazel scurried past the bright greenhouse walls, scraping her knees on the gravel even through her long dress. It hurt, and she felt herself slowing down. "Keep going! Don't stop!" 30 feet. 40. A sound shattered the night stillness, and she froze. Was it the prophet raising an alarm? No. It had come from her right, not her left. A cough. Or maybe a footstep scraping on gravel. From inside? Or a nearby building? She couldn't tell. Either way, she had to keep moving. She couldn't stop here in the light. Doggedly, she moved on, ensuring Caleb was behind her all the way. 50 feet. No sound of pursuit, but the gravel under her knees felt as loud as gunfire. 60 feet, and they were past the greenhouse. Another 10 feet farther, and they were hidden in shadow again. She stood up quickly, then helped Caleb to his feet. Her heart thudded against her ribcage. She held him for a moment against her chest as her eyes tried to pierce the darkness. The shining greenhouse had destroyed her night vision. There was no way to know what had made the sound. No way to tell how much farther they had to go. Gritting her teeth, Hazel took Caleb's hand and ran. Her long ponytail slapped from side to side as they dashed toward where she knew the compound wall would be. She couldn't see it, invisible as it was in the darkness, but it loomed in her memories. The wall that had kept her trapped inside every day of her life. Putting out a hand to keep from running smack into it, Hazel made contact. In daylight, from a distance, the wall looked natural, like trees planted in a neat, tight row. but the bark-covered posts were reinforced with thick wooden braces, creating a sturdy wall all around the wide compound. There were 2 gates, one at the front big enough for trucks to pass through, for those rare occasions when community members traded with the outside world, and the other, the gate Hazel was now feeling for in the dark, opening into the forest. This was the gate they used when they went out foraging for plants that didn't grow inside. Rarely had she ever been able to slip through the perimeter alone to spend some time away from the constant observation that was her daily life. Hazel ran her hands over the rough wooden posts in front of her. Her pulse hammered loudly in her ears. Was someone following them? That eerie moaning query had to have been an owl, right? A person would have shouted. There. She found it. She ran her hand slowly up the gate and found the smooth metal handle. Gasping in relief, she yanked. But the door didn't shift. Someone had dropped the lock bar in place. The gate was secured with a huge horizontal lock bar that she would have to push into its vertical position. Hazel handed her basket to her brother and gave the bar an experimental shove. It was heavy and high enough up that she struggled, clenching her teeth and feeling the pressure build behind her eyes as she heaved. Earlier that day, Hazel, fawning and as sweetly as she could, had asked her betrothed to open the gate so that she might collect flowers to make into a crown for their wedding day. His eyes had narrowed in that sinister way that sent jitters shooting up from her gut, and he insisted old May accompany her. When she had come back from foraging, she deliberately left the bar open, hoping no one would notice. But someone had. It barely budged. If she used sheer brute force, it would make an unholy noise. She'd have to open it slowly. She crouched and got her shoulder under the bar, then slowly straightened her legs. It shuddered against the wooden door, letting out the soft beginning of a truly awful shriek. Hazel locked her knees, panting, and paused. Her head felt like it might explode. Holding the bar in place was even harder than pushing it up, but she couldn't risk a sound, not when the prophet was so close, with nothing but a few sheets of plastic separating them. Slower this time, Hazel rose. Inch by incremental inch, the bar levered up. "Hurry," Caleb whispered. But Hazel knew that she couldn't. Panic could get them both caught, and she was at the limits of her strength. Her legs straightened, and the bar just passed halfway. With a small grunt, she reached overhead, took it in both hands, and turned, bracing the weight with her own. Her arms trembled. She pushed up, giving it everything she had, and the bar rose higher and higher. Finally, just when Hazel thought she might drop the terrible weight, the bar locked into place upright. Suddenly relieved of its force, she tumbled forward into the gate, scraping her forehead against the rough-hewn planks. With a deep breath, she gathered herself, pushed the door open a foot, motioned Caleb through, then followed. Her arms were shaking. She touched a fingertip to her forehead, but felt no blood. She wished there was a way to drop the bar again, but there wasn't, not without making way too much noise. When people came after them, it would be obvious which gate they had escaped through. Their only chance was to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the Wellspring commune. Taking Caleb's hand again, Hazel hurried them through the woods. They stuck to the well-worn path for the first few minutes. She didn't want to make too much noise breaking a trail through the crunchy scratch grass and dried pine branches. And she wanted to move fast. Going off trail at a gallop could mean twisting an ankle. and that would be deadly. They were only a few 100 feet away from the compound wall when Caleb tugged on her hand. "Hazel, wait," he whispered. "What's wrong?" She turned back and felt for her brother, touching his shoulders. "Are you hurt?" "The water," he whispered. "We have to use the water." Hazel bit back a growl of frustration. He was talking about the dangers outside of the compound they'd been taught about. The sin of others was infectious, like a terrible disease. Only the blessed waters of their wellspring protected them. Every time they'd left the compound, even for short foraging trips, they were made to bathe in the water to shield themselves. Hazel didn't believe a lot of what they'd been taught, not since the community had shown it cared more about its rules than her family. But Caleb clearly hadn't moved on the way she had. He was younger, more impressionable. "We need to save it for drinking. Besides, there's no one bad out here," Hazel told her brother. "We're fine." "No, we need to do it," Caleb insisted. He grabbed her arm and felt for the basket. "We have to go," she said, tugging the basket out of his reach. "Do you want them to catch you? Do you want them to take you away from me?" "Please, Hazel," Caleb whispered. "I don't want to be bad." Hazel blinked back sudden tears. He was just a kid. He'd never been out of the compound at night. He was being so brave, following her out into the unknown world. She was so proud of him. "I'm sorry. Of course we can. We just have to be fast." She crouched down and felt around in her basket for the water skin. Quickly she popped open the top and squirted a little on Caleb's head. "The wellspring protect you and keep you pure," she whispered, rubbing her wet hand down each of his arms. She handed him the water skin, and he did the same for her, only he squeezed a little too hard and soaked the whole top of her head. "Caleb, sorry, sorry." But he was giggling. "The wellspring protect you and keep you safe." He rubbed water on her arms, then capped the water skin and handed it back. She shook her ponytail over him, splattering a few cool drops on his upturned face and making him laugh quietly. "Okay. Ready to go?" "Ready," he promised. After hurrying along for half an hour, it was time to break away from the main trail. She told Caleb to go ahead a little way. "Slow and careful," she reminded him, handing over the basket for him to carry. "Don't walk across any logs." Once he was a few feet ahead, she turned around, bent down, and, stepping backward, carefully patted the earth where they had stepped off the smooth path. She fluffed the underbrush and resettled the pine needles on the ground. It was slow going, especially given that she couldn't see what she was doing. "This has to work," she agonized. She hoped it was making their path less obvious, not calling attention to it. Still, she took her time, and was feeling fairly confident that they wouldn't be easily followed. But it was taxing work, and when she caught up to Caleb, who was waiting a few dozen feet into the forest, she took a moment to catch her breath. "Did it work?" Caleb asked. His voice quavered. Hazel gathered him into a comically huge bear hug and swung him from side to side. He giggled, wrapping his arms around her waist. "They won't follow us," she promised. "No one is ever going to take you away from me." She let go, but Caleb clung to her waist. He was only 8, but he already came up past her chest. He'd be taller than her for sure. She wondered if he took after their father. Their parents had died so long ago it was hard to remember. Hazel gently pulled Caleb away, one hand on each shoulder, but only so that she could kneel down in front of him. "You're doing so good," she told him quietly. She couldn't see his face. It was way too dark. But she didn't need to. She knew it better than she knew her own. I never would have tried to run away if I didn't know how brave and strong you are. You and me are going to be okay. But we need to get as far away as we can before they notice we're gone. We're going to have to move fast, but also really carefully. Can you do that? I'm as good in the woods as you are. She ruffled his hair, even though she knew he hated it. You're also tired, and tired people make mistakes. Slow and steady, okay? Okay. Hazel took her brother's hand, and they set off through the thick forest. She couldn't see and had to step carefully to avoid tripping on the uneven ground. Keeping one hand in front of her face helped her move around trees and shrubs, but it didn't protect her from walking through spider webs or getting hit by low branches. Every second was agony. Her muscles felt locked with tension. She jumped at every strange noise. Was that a cougar? An insomniac bear? There was no way to see threats coming. But every step they took was one closer to freedom, and one farther away from the menace looming in the dark behind them. Hazel walked, and she didn't once look back.